Mrs. Speed Racer. Might as well. I'm walking through a ghost town, y'all ain't playing my sounds. Don't tell me to calm down, don't tell me to calm down. Only time I go backwards is when I wanna moonwalk. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. Don't test me, my mood's wrong. We are who we say that we are. You were lost in the stars, and it's all from the start. Never running no pace, never on the right page. But we still read that book, and we still run that race. Ay, Mississippi Racer riding out, no shortcuts, no time for that. Mississippi Racer riding out, till the wheels fall off, I'm driving that. Mississippi Racer riding out, we'll stop burning, strike the match. Mississippi Racer riding out, red light, green light, red light, good night. Ay, red light, green light, red light, good night. 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 Time to chill, don't sweat it.
Hey, good. Welcome everybody back. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm the NFL genius Gene Walzak, filling in for Chris. And as always, the man, the host with the most, Mr. Mo Better. How you feeling this morning, Mo?
I am doing great on a Wednesday, man. Glad to have you here. Can't wait to get into it.
Got a lot to get into. Yesterday was the first day of playoff baseball. I'm not sure how much of that you caught, but that was fun. I mean, we had look, the first game of the day, you get the Houston Astros versus the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers in a scenario where they had less than 1% chance of making the playoffs on August 1st. They make the playoffs. They get in. Their Cy Young pitcher, Tariq Skubal, pitches his ass off. It's 3-0 in the bottom of the ninth inning. And then the Astros that we all know from the postseason show up. Single. Runs scored. It's 3-1, second and third. And, you know, the Astros are right there, a chance to tie the game or win the game. And I forget the guy's name. He bats eighth in the lineup for the Astros, but he hits an absolute seed, 109 miles an hour off the bat, caught by the first baseman to end the game. And the Tigers take a 1-0 lead. Then you go down there in New York, in Milwaukee, the Mets beat the Brewers in Milwaukee for game one. I had a buddy of mine fly out there for the game. He's a Mets fan. Flew out there for the game, went to the game. He's already on a flight back now. Like, that's dedication. That's a real Mets fan. But the Mets go in there and they win the game. And then you get a 1-0 shutout. Everyone's darling this year. The Baltimore Orioles. Great young team. Corbin Burns. And they lose to the Royals 1-0 in Baltimore. Huge game there. And then the nightcap, the Braves, they just look like a shell of themselves right now. They're ready to go home. They lost 3-0 last night to San Diego. I don't see them making it out. I don't think they make it past today. I think they lose today, and I think they go home. When Chris Sale got scratched late in their game Monday, and he's not on the postseason roster right now, I think that took a lot of wind out of their sails. Sorry, JG, but I don't think there'll be a Choptober. I don't even think you guys win a game in Choptober. I think it's a Red October, and we're going to see that this weekend. But great opening day for the wild card round in baseball. But, like, one of the things, and I don't know, Mo, I'll pause there. Is there anything about yesterday that you've seen that you want to touch on, or is there anything that like you enjoyed? Did you get to catch up any of it?
The Mets. I remember very early in the season being on the show with you and Chris, and nobody thought the Mets would be here. Nobody thought that. And to see them here and playing the way they're playing, when at one point we were all talking about, well, it's going to be a fire sale. They don't know what they're doing. I'm just blown away that the Mets are here playing, how they turned it around. They've impressed me more than anybody.
So you're right, and it was a fire sale. You're talking about a team that said this is a rebuilding year. They traded away Jacob deGrom last year. They traded away Max Scherzer last year. They said this was a rebuilding year. And I'll tell you right now, the Phillies might see them next round, and that's not a team I'm looking forward to playing. They just play good baseball right now.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm with you.
But I was going to talk about that, and we will talk about this now in Wire to Wire, but spirited conversation happened on my Facebook yesterday, and it happens around the world of sports, and with two legends. Well, I don't want to say legends. That's not a great word to use. One absolute legend, humanitarian, passed away in Dikembe Mutombo over the weekend, and another guy by the name of Pete Rose, who brings up a lot of controversy and conversation or in the baseball world. And before I poison you with my opinion, because it's poison, it's fine, I get it. How do you feel? What's your reaction to the passing of Pete Rose?
Look, the best way I can say it is, look, I thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends, but if you're asking my opinion, he wasn't a great human being. I get a lot of people that are coming at me talking about how great a baseball player he was. I'm not here to argue that. I understand that, but who you are as a person, that's part of who you are as your legacy. I don't put him and Mutombo on the same level, and it's strange, right? Because he was a greater baseball player than Mutombo was a basketball player.
Yes.
But you can't touch him as a human being and a humanitarian. They're complete opposites. Pete Rose, if you really read up on him, and I don't know how many people did, he was a terrible human being.
So an awful human being.
Right. I can't put them on the same pedestal. The one guy passed away, like I said, thoughts and prayers to his family, friends. I got nothing great to say about Pete Rose. Terrible person, cheated the game. That's it for me.
And not only cheated the game, here's the part I can't get past, right? We talk about, well, it's so much different now. Like somebody likened him and compared him to the situation with Reggie Bush. Like Reggie Bush did something illegal and now it's legal. No. It's not legal. It's legal for me and you to gamble. It's not legal for a baseball player that can affect the game of baseball to gamble on the game of baseball. That's not legal. So let's not bring that up. And the part that bothers me the most is we'll talk about that oh, what, dude, we're not just letting him in the Hall of Fame because he's a jerk. No, it has nothing to do with him just being a jerk. He cheated the game of baseball. He was a sexist, misogynistic, bad person. But the part that everyone seems to overlook because he was never charged with a crime was that he openly admitted at 33 years old to have a relationship with a 15-year-old woman for 7 months. He just said he didn't have sexual relations with her until she was 16, which was the age of consent in the state of Ohio. I don't know, man. I can't think of a 33-year-old having sex with a 16-year-old or a 15-year-old and being like, oh, this guy is, I'm going to celebrate his pay. Screw him. Good riddance. I'm sorry. I might be the bad guy, but no, zero chance he gets any sympathy from me. I kind of wanted to bring that up, and Mo, this is why I love you, right? Unscripted, brought that topic up, and me and you have the exact same opinion on the matter.
That's crazy.
But let's talk about some WNBA. Last night, game 2, between both and listen, we could talk about the appetizer and the main event all we want. It is, you got the New York Liberty and the Las Vegas Aces, last year's finals. And I'll say this, right? I predicted a New York Liberty, Connecticut Sun finals. That's what I predicted. I think they're the best 2 teams in the W right now. Now, talent-wise, the Las Vegas Aces are right up there with both those teams. And last night, they played with New York the entire game. Game 1, it was a 10-point game, but it was not as close as a 10-point game. Does that sound bad? They never got the game within 6. Never. Right. In the second half. It never was within 6. They were up 10 the entire second half. Listen, the Aces are a loaded squad. They have Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, obviously the MVP Asia Wilson. Becky Hammon said in her post-game presser that this is why it's so tough to three-peat, because they're all celebrities and they're doing commercials. I feel like if that was said in the NBA or the NFL, that the reason that we're losing games is because they're distracted by being celebrities, it wouldn't have went over as well.
It wouldn't have.
Because it's the WNBA and the coverage isn't as much. I feel like that comment's getting swept under the rug. What are your thoughts on the Liberty Aces?
So the Liberty have been the best team all year long, and they just seem to have the Aces number. My problem with the Aces has been consistent. I think too many times they get caught up in watching A'ja Wilson play.
Yeah.
And they go to A'ja, and no doubt she's the best player in the league by far, but they go to her by default too much, and then they lack the diversity or the ball movement that they had the 2 years that they won the championship. They become almost an ISO team, and they end up just watching her, and it cost them. The game last night, close game, but and that was weird because Stewie didn't have a good night for New York, but Ionescu came through with a big game, and they found a way to pull it out. I just think that the way the Aces are playing, there's no way they're going to three-peat. I don't see it.
Yeah, well, Sabrina is making me look like the biggest liar ever. About a month ago, I commented on Ionescu and I said she's the most overrated player in the W. And she still might be. Like, I don't think she's to the level of Breanna Stewart or A'ja Wilson.
Right.
And Napheesa Collier and all the stars in the WNBA. I think she's a B-rate star, and I think she's a great Robin. But last night she was Batman. She was great. 9 for 18 from the floor. She's been hitting her threes. She's been great both games in this series. I got to give credit where credit's due. I said the girl was overrated, and she's proven me wrong in the playoffs. Now, Stewie did go there to play with Sabrina. So, like, that is the reason that Breanna Stewart is in New York, to go play with Sabrina. That reminds me a lot of LeBron going to play in South Beach with Dwayne Wade. But Dwayne Wade, I thought, was always going to be a better Batman than Sabrina Ionescu. But last night, Sabrina Ionescu had a little weight in her. I granted, different games, but like that clutch, that cold-blooded energy, I got to give her credit where credit's due.
I thought that was the difference in the game. Like, Asia's doing everything, but it seemed like nobody else came along with her. Stewie is struggling shooting, and Ionescu steps up again, and that's the difference. That's the difference so far in the series. She stepped up both games.
I completely agree with you. Now, game one, Stewie was you couldn't guard her. She was unguardable. Game two, 100% different story. And, it's funny. You watch a little bit of it last night, and you watched a lot of A'ja on Stewie, which you don't normally see because Jonquel Jones is on that New York Liberty team. But it was definitely a clear indicator that we need to slow down Breanna Stewart. And they did, but it still didn't work out in their favor. Game 3 will be in Las Vegas. How many games do you think this series goes? I think we both have the Liberty winning the series, but 2-0, 5-game series. How deep do you think the series goes?
I don't think it makes it to 5. Sadly, I just don't. I just think Vegas. I think Becky Hammon, she nailed it. She nailed it in what she said. That seems harsh, and it would definitely not go over well in the NBA. No. But it is big facts. That's old school. You see a lot of the players on Vegas doing commercials, and they're on TikTok, and they're celebrities. I don't think they're as focused as they were before.
I want to give more credit where credit's due. The Minnesota Lynx won a game yesterday in which, I've been very critical of. I'm like, listen, Napheesa Collier can't do it all. She can't do it all herself. They won a game last night when Napheesa Collier, by her own admission, did not have a great game. Very good defensively. She had 4 block shots. She was great on the defensive end. But offensively, she was at her worst. And, they stepped up. Courtney Williams, Caleb McBride, like Minnesota played a good basketball game without Napheesa Collier on the offensive end. Alana Smith, great game for her. 15 points for Alana Smith. She averages 10 points a game in the regular season throughout her career. She stepped up. Got to give Minnesota credit. These are the best 2 defensive teams in the WNBA, and they won a game. They won a game in which Napheesa Collier didn't play well.
And I wouldn't have called that. If you told me that she struggled the way she struggled, I would have said they definitely would have lost. They got a lot of contributions from players that they don't normally get in terms of how many their scoring average is going up. Their defense is always on point. Both teams. I still think your prediction is on point. I think you are, and in the end, you're going to get the Liberty versus the Lynx, right? I just see that coming.
You have so many good players on the Connecticut Sun. I have the Connecticut Sun versus the Liberty. I think the Connecticut Sun will end up winning the series. I know that the next two games are in Connecticut. I don't think this series goes 5. I think Connecticut wins both games at home and wins the series 3-1. There's too many good players on Connecticut. You have Alyssa Thomas, Marina Mabry, Dejanay Carrington, DeWanna Bonner. They're all WNBA stars. You have 4 very good starters, and they all complement each other well. Dejanay Carrington is your Drew Holiday comp. Like, he's a lot more vocal than Drew. Alyssa Thomas, I don't know. I don't want to give her a comp of Joker, but the way she passes the ball in the post, she is so good in the post, passing the ball. So then you have your shooter in Marina Mabry. You want to talk about a trade that gets swept under the rug. Chicago Sky trade Marina Mabry to the Connecticut Sun might have put them in the finals.
I would just say this. The thing about the Lynx is why I think they can make this competitive. It's not just because of their defense. I think if they can muck it up and make the game at their pace, because they want to play at a certain pace, I think they can make this competitive. Look, it's no question the Sun have more talent, but I think that the Lynx have a lot of dogs on their team.
I completely agree with you. I look forward to Friday and we can get to watch both of those games. It should be good game 3s.
I agree.
All right, well, let's move over to the NFL. 25 minutes in. I'm ready for some NFL action. I want to start with this. The Las Vegas Raiders are open to trading Davante Adams. I knew this was, listen, maybe it's just Gene being Gene, but I knew when Antonio Pierce called out that team for people making business decisions. Here's the thing that I don't think a lot of people get that didn't watch that game fully. Go back and watch that game on all 22. Like I said, I'll give anybody my logins. You can go watch it yourself. The Carolina Panthers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. When the Raiders are coming from behind versus the Baltimore Ravens, Gardner Minshew is throwing the ball to 2 guys. 2 guys. And, I have the stats pulled up for you just because I care. That's what I do. But when they're coming from behind versus the Ravens in week 2, Raiders had a huge win at Baltimore. No one will argue that. It's a great win for them. But they're throwing the ball to Brock Bowers and Davante Adams. They had 21 of the 36 targets in that game. 21 of the 36 targets in that game were to Brock Bowers and Davante Adams. They fall behind the Carolina Panthers early in that game. And Antonio Pierce talks about business decisions. Trey Tucker and Jacoby Myers. Now, granted, Davante Adams had a lot of targets early in the first half. He had 1 target in the second half. 1 target. And I'm not saying, listen, there's plenty of guys, like especially in the secondary, that got called out for business decisions. But I knew immediately after that game, the body language on the sideline, it just felt. And watch the 22. Davante Adams, one of the most respected receivers in the game. I don't want to say anything bad about the guy. I love him. I felt like I felt like he gave up in the second half versus the Carolina Panthers. And I hate saying that. Like, it literally took a lot for me to get that out of my mouth, but it felt like he gave up. Now, after the game, hamstrings bothering him. Didn't play last week. But his comments, his body language. Am I missing something, Mo?
Nah, you spot on. And I think his head coach would agree with you. I think that's how he felt. He didn't call him out by name. He didn't say, but I think everybody knew who he was directing that comment towards. And I find it curious that suddenly the hamstring is bothering him and he won't play. To me, this all aligns with the fact that he's getting traded. He's getting moved. It's going to happen. He doesn't want to be there. Pierce doesn't want him there. He's going to get moved. And most people would say, well, you know where he's going to get moved to? The Jets, right? I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is going to do everything in his power to try to make that a reality. I don't know if it's going to happen, but that seems to be the most natural landing place.
Let me ask you this, and a lot of people have been mentioning the Kansas City Chiefs with the loss of Rashee Rice. I think that would be so colossally bad for the Raiders to trade Davante Adams to an in-division rivalry.
Right.
Now, granted, here's the Raiders thinking. Let me give you the Raiders. They're not going to re-sign him. It's a rental. And if we're not going to compete this year, why not take a second-round pick away from a division rival? I just don't know if Raiders fans could stomach Davante Adams playing against them twice this year. And if they ultimately end up winning a Super Bowl, if you get Patrick Mahomes, Davante Adams, oh, man. You want to talk about it? Listen, Rashee Rice has been a great receiver. That's an upgrade. A very, very clear upgrade. I don't know if Raiders fans would be able to stomach that. A three-peat in Kansas City due directly to a trade. I wonder how Bills fans stomach trading the pick that got the Chiefs Patrick Mahomes and then trading the pick that got the Chiefs Xavier Worthy. Like, I wonder how that happened. I couldn't imagine Raiders fans stomaching trading Davante Adams to the Kansas City Chiefs.
They would want Mark Davis's head.
Oh my God! And they
not his haircut, but they'd want his head. It's so anti-old school that you would make that trade in division. You wouldn't do that. You'd be like, oh, you want to be traded? No problem. And they'd send him as far away as possible, right? Like, and I don't even think him going to the Jets doesn't affect the Raiders at all. The Raiders they're not going to compete. And us as fans, we would love that trade to happen. I'm sure Aaron would love it to happen. I think it would open up the Jets offense that much more, but I don't think it's a lock that that's going to happen. If I'm the Raiders, I'm going to trade him for the best deal that we get. Out for him, I'm looking out for us.
But see, it could happen that the best deal they get is from the Chiefs. I would almost have to turn down the best deal I can get to not trade him to a division rivalry. If I'm the Philadelphia Eagles and we're out of it, and the Dallas Cowboys need a player, I'd rather go down a round. I'll take a third rounder then. Not giving him to Dallas. Just not doing it. I don't know. Just thoughts. Just my.
Speaking of Dallas, he would help in Dallas too. They've got one weapon on that team.
Yeah, I don't know if they can absorb the $30 million payroll. I think that's the biggest issue for a lot of teams is Davante Adams' paycheck. Here we go. Listen. This I agree with. He said Raiders fans are also very ungrateful and don't appreciate what he's done there, even after Derek Carr. I meant Derek. That's fine. I agree with that. The Raiders fans are ungrateful. I think they're ungrateful for the years they had with Derek Carr. And I think you allowed a snake oil salesperson in Josh McDaniels to move Derek Carr out of there. And I believe that the Raiders would have been competitive if they would have moved to Antonio Pierce or stuck with Rich Bisaccia instead of allowing that snake oil salesperson in the building and Josh McDaniels. So I agree with that. No, ECG, don't disagree with you there. But we got to admit there was a little quit there. We got just a little quit. A little bit.
Just a little bit.
A little bit.
I mean, but look, to his credit, your boy who you came there to play with, they get rid of. And you're still coming in, you're still being a professional, and you could easily be complaining because as great a wide receiver as he is, most wide receivers, you're still dependent in many ways on who is throwing you the football. And they downgraded on who is throwing him the football.
Spot on. I will say this. I think they have the right man at the job when Antonio Pierce. And I just really I think that they'll continue to play hard. And I'll post this comment because I think it has merit. The situation sounds like a shot back at the Raiders. If you want to shot me, then I'm just going to request a trade so everyone knows I want to be gone. Yeah, dude, I don't disagree with you. I think that there's definitely some him and Hall in this scenario. And I think that the Raiders organization outside of Antonio Pierce deserves a lot of blame for how this situation happened. But I will say this, Antonio Pierce got that team up to win 2 big football games versus 2 AFC North opponents in the Browns and the Ravens. Imagine if they would have took care of business versus Carolina. They'd be 3-1. They'd be 3-1 right now. But speaking of Rashee Rice and replacements for Rashee Rice, the Chiefs have to go out in the market and look for replacements for Rashee Rice. Their number one wide receiver, Rashee Rice. I don't know if it's confirmed. People are saying it might not be as bad. I'll wait for confirmation, but it looks like he tore his ACL Sunday. And to add insult to injury, Patrick Mahomes is the one that tore his ACL. I don't know. You've seen that play. It was wild.
I saw the play. Yeah.
Mahomes threw an interception and went to go make the tackle. Rashee Rice strips the ball, which incredible hustle play, and Mahomes dives into his knee. I mean, not his best moment for Patrick, but and then Hollywood Brown, who they brought in to be their number 2 target, he looks like he's out until January. He might be back on playoffs. The Chiefs got to make a move, right? They got to bring a wide receiver in or trade for someone, right?
I think they do. If we look at what this team was able to do in the postseason, it was impressive last year. But let's be honest, as great as Patrick Mahomes is, they leaned on their defense.
Yeah.
They won the Super Bowl. They got to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl because they had the great defense. I'm taking nothing away from how great Mahomes is, but that team is defensive driven. I don't know if you can pull that off again with the offense being mediocre and the defense being elite again. I don't know. And look, Father Time waits for no man. I think Travis Kelce, he showed signs of aging last year, but he picked it up in the postseason. I don't know if you can count on that over, and sooner or later you're going to go to that well, and it's just not going to be there. I think they do have to make a move.
100%. Some of the names out there for them to either sign or bring in, I'm going to read them to you, and I want to hear just your first reaction. Some of them are interesting. I don't know. In my head, I can't imagine some of these guys going there. But one of them is previous New Orleans Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas, who's still a free agent.
I don't know why they would want Michael Thomas. By the way, this is just me putting out there. I'm talking about the current version of Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
He's a shell of the player that he once was. I don't know what his physical condition is right now, but what do they need with a very big and very slow wide receiver? Unless you're going to try to make him play tight end.
Another name, and this one I find a little bit more interesting, is, I think this 100% could happen, is Deontay Johnson, who just signed a contract over in Carolina. Carolina looks like they're 1-3. They're doing Carolina things. Deontay Johnson might be a great fit there.
I think he would be a difference maker. If he had a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, yes, that would be a great pickup. If that's something that could happen, I don't know if there's a better available guy out there if he's available.
And then the last one I want to bring up outside Davante Adams, which you talked about earlier, is Nuke, DeAndre Hopkins. Right now, the Titans are sitting at 1-3. They have a logjam at wide receiver without a quarterback that's really getting them the football. You could probably get a replacement, DeAndre Hopkins, that easily go over there and win. He's not making a ton of money. It could fit. That would be the most glove in hand fit for me.
Okay, so you just picked the one guy that is the best move. Even though D-Hop doesn't get deep as much, he's still a great route runner. He can still move the chains. Like where Kelce has fallen off, D-Hop will pick it up. He'll move the chains, and he's a monster in the red zone.
And ECG talking about Davante Adams, he goes, if he goes and elevates someone like Garrett Wilson or Quentin Johnson or even Drake London, the Raiders will regret letting him go. Having a guy like that in your locker room elevates your wide receiving core. They got to let him go. I think the relationship is so severed, and they're not re-signing him, so might as well get an asset for him. They're not going to win the Super Bowl this year, so you got to get something for him. And he even said, what's even interesting is if he goes back to the Packers and pairs with Jaden Reed and passes the torch, it's not like Davante doesn't know Jordan Love. They know each other well. Sneaky fit.
That would be interesting.
It would be, especially with Christian Watson being hurt again. That guy's hamstrings are made of like spaghetti strings. All right, so selfish plug here. Selfish plug. I want to ask you this question about in the NFL. And what player or team has surprised you the most 4 weeks into the season?
Vikings. Absolutely, Vikings.
I'm so glad you said that, Mo.
The Vikings. I I got to experience them firsthand as a Niners fan. I got to experience them. I'm in awe of this because it was just last year. Sam Darnold was on the Niners. He was the backup quarterback. And I remember Shanahan kept saying, like, this guy can play. He's equated himself to our system. He looks like Steve Young. And it was the running joke throughout the season that every time we brought up his name, it's like, well, if Purdy goes down, we've got the next Steve Young, so we're good. He goes to Minnesota and he fits into their system seamlessly with their weapons. And he's played terrific football. I mean, he's not a turnover machine like he had been known to be. 11 touchdowns, 3 picks. I'm impressed with the Vikings because I didn't see them being this good. That doesn't mean they're going to sustain it. But if you ask me early in the year who impresses me, it's the Viking and it's the Commanders.
All right, listen, we'll talk about the Commanders in a second. We will, I promise. And I just want to, this is me being me. When we had conversation about the Minnesota Vikings, I've had a few of them. And I said, if Sam Darnold can hold up that offense and if he can move the football and be serviceable, the Vikings will be better than people expect them to be. Now, I obviously didn't project them to be 4-0, but the reason I said that is because that Brian Flores has done an absolute masterful job coaching defense for the Minnesota Vikings. Mo, I hate to do this to people, and I won't do it to you, but anybody in the chat, and outside of ECG, because I know he knows the whole depth chart, but I want you to name 5 players on the Vikings defense. What? Name 3. Name 3 guys on that Vikings defense. You should know now they're 4-0. They're 4-0.
And I don't know 3 guys in that defense. What I do know is Brian Flores is coaching his tail off. Like what he's doing says, yeah, I'm ready to be a head coach again. That's what I see in that. And
never, if Miami isn't proven to you that he never should have been fired in the first place, let me ask you a question real quick. Who's a better head coach, Brian Flores or Mike McDaniel?
Here's the best way I can put this. I think Flores is a better coach. I think Mike McDaniels is a better manager of people, if that makes any sense.
You're right, because the Brian Flores conversations with Tua is what everyone refers to when they talk about that. But the other 51 guys in the locker room had no problem with the way Brian Flores managed them. It was the one quarterback that he didn't want on his roster because organizations make mistakes. Now, granted, Tua has shown that he can be very accurate in the right system with the right situation with Mike McDaniels. But you added Tyreek Hill, and you've won 0 more games than Brian Flores in 3 years. The same friggin' team. You won no more playoff games. You won no more regular season games. Brian Flores is the better coach. I'm sorry. He's the better coach. And I'll put it to you this way, right? And I'll go right back to you. I think that he needs to be in a situation with a veteran quarterback. I think if you put him in a situation without a young quarterback, right? An example, right? And I think the perfect fit for him was where Raheem Morris is in Atlanta. Well, great for Raheem Morris. He's doing a great job. Absolute no-fly zone in Atlanta. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you put him in a situation like Harbaugh landed with Justin Herbert, who's not a rookie quarterback, but he's not a veteran, but he's kind of there. If you put Brian Flores in a situation with a veteran quarterback and allow him to coach that veteran quarterback and that team up, that team will be better. They will be better. Now you look at, and look, we ECG said it, Mike McDaniels, Eagles players coach, Brian Flores, old school, no BS coach. I agree with that. But if you watch that team on Monday Night Football, where Tyreek Hill is screaming at players on the sideline, and you can see McDaniels rolling his eyes, looking at the field, like couldn't correct his own player on the sideline. I don't know. Yeah, that's a perfect comparison. You switch him and Robert Saleh, the Jets might be 4-0. 3-1. They probably don't beat the 49ers week 1, but they're definitely 3-1. They definitely win last week.
Yeah, well, Robert Saleh might not have a job much longer.
Oh, man. And you want to talk about that? World-class human being. Robert Saleh has always been a great guy. I was wrong about Robert Saleh because I thought Robert Saleh would take that team to the promised land. I got swept into the Hard Knocks last year. And the one thing I kept saying at the end of Hard Knocks was, I like him a lot, but he's really, really like cheesy when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. Like, I've never seen a coach admire a player more. It was really weird. And I'm like, for this guy to be a hard-ass defensive guy, he shouldn't be like gooking and gawing over Aaron Rodgers.
100%.
But I was wrong about him, man. I picked the Jets to win the Super Bowl this year. And I don't think that like that's completely thrown out the window, but I thought that their offense would be Aaron Rodgers would just lead it and like it would step in and just here we go, glove fit, and the defense would remain the defense. I watched that team last year with Zach Wilson. I'm like, man, if this team just had a quarterback, they'd win the Super Bowl.
Right.
Well, I was wrong.
And the defense hasn't been bad, but it hasn't been as dominant as it was before. And I still think the offense is still struggling to find its legs. My only concern with the offense was the concern I had before. That offensive line, sometimes they're there for them. A lot of times they're not. Here's the crazy thing. They're getting ready to go. I believe they're playing Minnesota, right? Don't they play Minnesota next?
The Jets play Minnesota. And I wanted to save this for tonight, but I'll give you.
Yeah, I know you guys want to make your picks later on. I got you.
No. But I'm going to give you this one here. I'm telling you right now, and it's in London. It's a 9:30 game. I am telling you right now, this is the easiest play of the NFL season. Take the Jets plus 2.5. The Vikings are going to London off an emotional win at Green Bay. The Jets are going to London after losing a 10-9 game at home to the Denver Broncos. I guarantee it. Book it. Anybody wants to take my money, let me know. I guarantee it. The Jets plus 2.5 is the easiest bet of the entire year. It's my pick of the year. Because it's not that the Vikings are bad and the Jets are, or Vikings are bad and the Jets are great. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the Jets are better than 2-2, and the Vikings are worse than 4-0.
I agree. Look, you're going to cost me some money because one of my picks was I thought the Vikings would beat the Jets because I think Brian Flores is going to explode. He's going to exploit all those weaknesses in that offensive line. Look, Aaron's going to get him a couple of times, but I think they're going to get to Aaron a lot of times.
I think that the cadence that they have this week with the Jets offense will be a lot of quick throws. And the Jets will have no problem taking 4 or 5 yards at a time. What the Vikings do is, and what Brian Flores has created, remember the Tampa 2? That type of, Brian Flores is creating a defense, and it's actually like, I would call it a ghost cover 4. And let me hear what I'm saying. He's playing cover 4, but he's blitzing one of the 4 deep safeties that's and he's making you guess where that blitz is coming from, right, and not allowing you. And what he's allowing, it's so interesting to watch. And it's one of the most complex defenses you'll ever see. But I think if there's anyone that can read it at the line of scrimmage, it's Aaron Rodgers. I invite you, and I'm sure ECG knows this because I know he watches a lot of film, but I invite you to watch the film on the Vikings defense, because what they're playing is they're basically allowing you to get 5-6 yards in the flat all the way down the field. And the moment you get real, like, try to take a shot, they have a blitzer in your face and they're creating turnovers. Do you know who leads the NFL in sacks? The Minnesota Vikings. And I think that this is a bad matchup for them. By the way, if I asked you who was second and third, I guarantee you no one would get it. I guarantee you no one would get who's second and third.
What, in sacks?
Yes. Team sacks. Second and third, without looking it up. If anybody gets it, I will buy you a pizza and send it to your house.
I honestly have no clue.
It's so unrealistic. Whoever's second and third, I'll give it to 950. If someone posted 2 teams without Googling it, I will pay for a pizza and send it to your house. It's insane to think.
But I love that defense. And it is very much like the Tampa 2. But here's the thing, right? They're going to give up stuff underneath, and they're great tacklers. You catch a short 5-yard pass, you're tackled. Like, it's a 5-yard pass. There's no yak after the catch. I mean, at least so far they've been that terrific. I'm not just impressed with the defense. Like I said, if Sam Darnold is going to be this rock solid, and that's what he is, he's been solid. And when they've needed him to make at least one great throw, he's made one great throw. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a competitive game, and you might be spot on. If anybody can dissect the defense, Aaron can walk up to the line of scrimmage and go, "I know exactly where he's coming from," and if he can dink and dunk them to death, then that'll be the game right there.
So the answer to my trivia question earlier was the New York Giants and the Denver Broncos are number 2 and number 3 in the league in sacks.
There's no way I would have guessed that. No way.
And the cool thing about the Vikings is their sacks all come from the edge or from linebackers. Pat Jones, Jonathan Greenard, and Andrew Van Ginkel have 12 of their 17 sacks. It's incredible to watch. Yes, that's right. Brian Flores is known for cover 8, which is a variation of cover 2, but the safety switch to allow shallow zones and linebackers to read the play off the snap. Very, very complex to dissect. You are absolutely correct. And cover 8, he's absolutely correct when he says this. Essentially, he's much better than Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer is getting shredded in Dallas.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Well, a lot of big name DCs are getting shredded so far this season.
Yeah. So let's move on. And we have listen, I'll tell you right now. You asked surprise teams and you said Jaden Daniels. You said the Washington Commanders. We should name this show Gene Was Wrong, because I'm right about a lot in the NFL. But let me tell you what I think I was wrong about. If anybody listened to me, now granted, he might not have been a good head coach. I still could be correct about that. But if anybody listened to me for the last 2 years, you knew one of the guys I hated on the most was Cliff Kingsbury. I was like, you want to talk about a guy that was gifted talent, like Patrick Mahomes he had in college. Then he drafts Kyler Murray. And now Jaden Daniels. I don't know why I keep putting a Mick at the front of his name. But you want to talk about a guy I felt like was gifted talent, a guy I talked about very poorly. Cliff Kingsbury seems to have designed a system that works perfectly for Washington. And when Cliff was asked about Jaden Daniels, it was really interesting the words that he used to describe him. He is a workaholic. He's the first one here. He's the last one out. The guy studies more than anyone I've ever been around. Any quarterback that I've ever coached, this guy studies more than them. Well, the 2 other quarterbacks that he coached are Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes. Now, Patrick Mahomes in college, fine. You want to talk about him not studying as much? That's okay. But the indication here to me was he's letting you know that it wasn't his offense that was the issue. It was Kyler Murray not studying the offense, not working the offense. And I should have known better, right? I should have known better. Because when they put the clause in Kyler's contract about him having to study weekly and not play Call of Duty, and then all ex-players, players that you respect Patrick Peterson, done a lot for the NFL, goes out and trashes Kyler Murray when he leaves. AJ Green, he's a player that you have to respect for years. Kyler Murray was seen verbally like undressing AJ Green on a route that he threw a pick six on. I'm not saying that Kyler Murray hasn't grown, because I think he has. But I am saying that I might have given Cliff Kingsbury way too much flack for what happened in Arizona, when in reality he drafted a quarterback that just didn't study. Because the Commanders are balling. And Jaden Daniels, not only is he leading the league through 4 weeks in completion percentage, it is the highest completion percentage by any quarterback in the history of the NFL through 4 weeks of the season.
What is it, like 80
83%.
It's something insane. Yeah.
82.8%. I said 83 because I was rounding up to 82.8%. The Commanders are absolutely one of the surprises. And, the question is asked all through, any platform that you're watching. Now, granted, I'm not ready to anoint him the best quarterback in the NFC yet.
Right.
But I don't know, man. If you were asking who you'd rather have in the NFC, it'd be tough to name a quarterback or two or three that you would take over Jayden Daniels right now. It'd be really tough to do that. If you're starting a franchise tomorrow, can you think of one quarterback that you would take over Jayden Daniels in the NFC?
See, I'm glad you prefaced that with in the NFC.
Yeah, AFC is loaded. You take Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Listen, that's loaded.
No, I look, I loved him coming out. So no, the answer would be no. I'm not taking him. He plays with the kind of poise that you forget he's a rookie. And while he's a mobile quarterback, I would push back on the notion that he's a running quarterback. He can run, but he will extend plays more than take off and run. He's very selective when he takes off. This kid is just really poised. And you're right. I think Kingsbury has found his guy. He's made an offense that fit his guy's skill set, unlike Carolina, and it's just working.
You got to give credit where credit's due. They've done a great job. Dan Quinn has improved that defense weekly, even though that secondary is awful. Dan Quinn has improved that defense weekly, and the Washington Commanders offense looks better and better each week. I actually think that they got to be the favorite to win the NFC East, which sounds so tough for me to say as an Eagles fan.
Wow, you think they're going to be able to sustain that?
I do. And Terry McLaurin finally getting a chance to show how great of a wide receiver he is. It looks good over there in Washington. It does. But I guess we'll see. I guess I don't want to admit that the Philadelphia Eagles are cooked. I don't want to admit that. I don't think they're cooked. I think that they can come back from what's going on in the bye week and getting guys healthy. But there's something about 15 missed tackles that tells me that you gave up in a football game. And it was 108 degrees, no AJ, no Devontae, no Lane. Get down 14-0 early. You're getting outgained 254-0 after the first quarter. Felt like a lot of quit in that Eagles team.
Now, do you think it's more about Hurts turning the ball over, or it's a combination of him turning the ball over and the defense just not being very good?
I've said this about Jalen Hurts since he's came in the league. He's not an anticipatory thrower. He's never been an anticipatory thrower. I think Jalen Hurts is a winner. I think he's a grinder. And I think he has the intangibles. I think he studies. I think he works hard. But he doesn't trust his wide receivers. And when he locks on the wide receivers, like he did with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, he locks on to them. So when they're missing from the lineup, like he has not developed any relationship with Jahan Dotson whatsoever. And once again, if you watch that tape, you can see Jahan Dotson winning on the line multiple times. And we're like, oh, Jahan Dotson stinks. No, he doesn't. Jahan Dotson put up 1,000 yards with Sean Clifford Franklin as quarterback at Penn State. He's one of the best bad ball catchers I've ever seen. He's not a bad wide receiver. It's a trust thing. And I don't think he trusts his wide receivers. He was they were running out Grant Calcaterra and Jack Stoll, our second and third tight ends, because Hurts had more of a relationship with them and knew where they'd be on the field. He doesn't anticipate throws. He does a very poor job of reading coverage. And Todd Bowles is one of the best defensive coordinators, best defensive minds in all of football, and has his number. Makes them look silly every time they play. It's done it every single time they played.
Yeah, I might have overstepped when I said I thought Hurts would have an MVP caliber season, but it's 4 games in. I'm not changing that. He has plenty of time to prove me right But you are spot on. Nobody would know better than you. He is not an anticipatory thrower. He's one of those guys, and there's more than a few of them in the league who has to see you open to throw the football.
100%. And that's okay. If you're an athletic guy that sees it and you have trust in your wide receivers and you know where they're going to be, that's fine. Like, I think his anticipation with AJ or Devontae comes through repetition. It's not necessarily like he knows where they'll be because they've done it hundreds of times in practice, but he doesn't know where Jahan's going to be. He doesn't know where Paris Campbell's going to be. He doesn't know where John Ross is going to be. He doesn't know where any of these wide receivers are going to be. So if we're being completely honest, and I walked into that game Sunday and I told you the Eagles are going to lose this football game. Even as a fan, I'm like, the Eagles are going to lose this football game. I knew it. But, hopefully the bye heals all wounds.
Do you think they've been too reliant on Saquon or not giving him the ball more?
I think Saquon Barkley's been incredible, and I think there's Saquon Barkley catch away from being 3-1. I think he's been as advertised. I think he's still one of the most elite running backs in football. And I think he'll continue to have a good year, and I think he'll be the reason why this team doesn't collapse. But I'll tell you right now, Nick Sirianni, his seat is steaming hot.
Let me ask you, I know we've talked about Sirianni before. Is Sirianni's seat hotter than Robert Saleh's seat?
No. I think Robert Saleh is the hottest seat in the NFL. I think if the Jets go into London and lose that football game, and I think that he could be fired after Sunday. I don't think Sirianni can be fired after Sunday. He's on a bye week. But I do 100% think his seat's hot. I don't think it's as hot as Saleh's, but I think it's hot.
Yeah, my problem with Saleh, you brought it up earlier in the show. He's a good guy, a good coach, or maybe a great coordinator, but not a good coach. But he's been too much of a fanboy, and he's trying to anticipate what he thinks Aaron would say or like. So when he tries to say the things in post game, and it doesn't go well because Rodgers comes up behind him and undercuts him every chance, right? Like, you know what I mean? When he was like, well, we need to cut down on the verbiage and at the line of scrimmages and this and that. And Rodgers goes behind him and goes, or we could just hold guys accountable. We could do that part. Like, it just feels like it's closer to the end for him than most people would think.
Bro, Aaron Rodgers has done this his entire career. And this is partly the reason why he was listed. I remember when Chris was reading that list as the most annoying player in the NFL. And there's a reason he's listed that way. Look, as far as talented as Aaron is, I wouldn't say he's a bad person, but he's got a very unique personality. And he will not hold his tongue, and he will tell you what he's thinking, and he will speak his mind. And a lot of times it comes off as a bad teammate. A lot of times it comes off as him being a bad teammate. And I think with him doing that to his coach and undercutting him in the press conference, you can have that same conversation with Robert Saleh in private. You don't have to say that to New York media. And Robert Saleh's job's on the line, right? Doesn't matter to Aaron Rodgers. Doesn't matter. Not one bit.
No, and I think you brought this up too. A long time ago when we were talking about Rodgers is only going to be in New York but so long, right? And everything is about right now. And if they don't have confidence that Saleh could be the guy right now, they're going to move off of that as quickly as possible because they're going to try to give Rodgers more reasons to stay than leave. Like Rodgers could easily walk away and go, "I'll retire right now. I'll be done." But I think they want to keep him there at least for another year beyond this season.
And I hope so. I hope they do because I want to see Aaron Rodgers play football, but we'll see. It doesn't look good does not look good over there in New York. But I think they did. I think they right the ship this week in London, and I think they would beat the Minnesota Vikings. The last thing I want to bring up before we wrap up, Dallas Cowboys. They're going to play this week at the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is the first time I remember a Dallas Cowboys team where their defense is playing without Micah Parsons, without DeMarcus Lawrence. And without Dan Quinn. Mike Zimmer's got his hands full, and I don't think he's that good of a coach. I think the writing's on the wall, man. I think the Cowboys completely collapse. Your thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys?
I said before the season started, I told everybody, I said, I don't think Dallas is going to make the playoffs. They're not going to make the playoffs. And I'm looking at them on offense. They're one-dimensional. On defense, they can't stop the run. They're not stopping the pass when they need to. Like, I think this is a team that it's in decline. They're going to have more questions than answers at the end of the season because they're not going to make the playoffs.
I completely agree with you. I don't think they are. I picked them not to make the playoffs also. Part of it was because I hate them, but the other part was, I'm tell the truth. I don't want to lie to you. But part of it was because I hate them, but the other part would be because, I don't know, just not a Dallas Cowboy fan at all. And I think that their team has done a terrible job this offseason. I think you have a lame duck coach in Mike McCarthy. And, granted, you look at these things that happen throughout the NFL. And I'm going to end on this point, and then I'll pass it over to you to close us out. But successful franchises have a stability to them. They have a quarterback that's married to the coach. They have good guys in place. Most of them have offensive-minded head coaches with good defensive coordinators. You look at situations in the NFL that constantly continue to fail. And it's constantly new coaches coming in to work with young quarterbacks that they didn't draft. I drank the Kool-Aid. I told you how bad Matt Eberflus was the last 2 years. And then I watched Hard Knocks, and, you get caught up and you listen to them. And I think part of the reason that we all have to take a step back is these NFL coaches are so good that when you watch them on TV, you're like, wow, that coach is great. Yeah, I mean, he's one of the 50 best coaches in the world. But it doesn't mean he's a top 10 coach in the NFL. And I watched Eberflus on Hard Knocks, and I thought he was the guy, and I really enjoyed what he was doing. And I think that Bears defense will consistently keep them competitive. But if the Bears flunk out this year, and they fire a lame duck coach and Matt Eberflus, and they hire another coach that's not named Lincoln Riley to coach Caleb Williams, you are falling into the same trap you have done for the last 3 quarterbacks. Bears going to bear. Panthers going to panther. A lot of these teams are constantly cycling in quarterbacks and head coaches. You have to allow your coach to draft a quarterback he wants and build within. Andy Reid went over to Kansas City and had Alex Smith, and they went to the playoffs, and he drafted Patrick Mahomes. I want Patrick. I want this guy. Build him up in his system, and it's been a match made in heaven. That's all I have to say. I hope these NFL teams learn from their mistakes. Mo, any final thoughts before we close out?
No, great show. Always appreciative of the knowledge that you drop. Great show. Glad you came on.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in this week. This morning, Coffee and Sports. We'll be back tomorrow, same bat time, same bat channel. I'm the NFL genius, Gene Walzak. That is Mr. Mo Better. And we are